Well, Sergio Perez seems to be on the exit door from Red Bull as the Mexican driver continued with his poor performances in Silverstone, marking yet another race in which he failed to exit Q1. This time, going off the gravel on his out lap was the primary reason he beached the car into the gravel trap. Of course, the line for the second seat in Red Bull is quite long, and with the latest statements from Horner, it's safe to assume that Perez is everything but safe. So, with all this in mind, could we see a mid-season swap between Perez and one of the Racing Bulls drivers? And more importantly, what does it mean for Liam Lawson? There is no question about the poor performance of Sergio Perez that plagued his chances of seeing the end of the 2-year extension he's just signed. He's probably one of the few, if not the only drivers to sign an extension and drive worse after it. And when looking at where the team stands in the Constructors' Championship and in terms of scoring points compared to their rivals in the past couple of races, you'd understand the need of worry in the Austrian team's camp. This is something that's been addressed by Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, as both of them reveal that there is a clause that currently isn't helping Perez in any situation. For example, if he is to finish 100 points behind Max or be 6th or lower in the Drivers' Championship, he wouldn't stand a chance of continuing as the second driver in Red Bull. Right now, Perez is fulfilling both of these criteria, and when talking about the future of the Mexican driver, Christian Horner, who was one of the biggest supporters for Perez but is now slowly but surely losing faith in the veteran, went on to say, "Obviously, Perez has had a tough spell. His first 5 races were very competitive. The last 5 have been nowhere, and we want to see Sergio from the first 5 back. He knows that. He's aware of that. He's been working hard in the sim this week, working hard to understand where it's just not playing out for him." Furthermore, Christian Horner went on to say that, luckily for Red Bull, they have a wide pool of drivers to choose from, which means that they can apply pressure to Perez's one way or another if it's not through the contract that he just signed. When commenting about why they would give 2 years of extension to the driver who struggles to score points, let alone keep a close gap to Verstappen, Horner went on to say, "As to why we extended Perez's contract too early, that's a brutally hard question. It made absolute sense to sign him at that point in time, but this is a business in which there are pressures to deliver. We thought the contract would help. I think it's something that Perez is working very hard on, and he knows this is a sport where there is no hiding, particularly with Verstappen as your teammate." Obviously, you have to look at the developments outside of the track and see whether or not Red Bull are preparing for a sensational switch. Liam Lawson will drive the RB20 to be tested and evaluated for his skills, as the team has now found themselves in a very tricky position. They definitely do not have the best car in their hands, and as Marko said, they cannot always count on the Verstappen factor, given the fact that when he's forced to push to the absolute maximum, mistakes can happen, such as the one where he damaged the floor during Q1 in Silverstone and had to run with a repaired but still damaged version throughout the remainder of the qualifying session. Even though the Dutchman is quite safe in the Drivers' Championship right now, the same cannot be said for the team in general, as squads like McLaren and Mercedes have outscored Red Bull heavily right now in the past 6 weekends from Miami onwards, which hints towards a competitive fight in the Constructors' Championship if Perez doesn't get replaced sooner rather than later. A mid-season swap is something that Red Bull have practiced for quite some time now, and if you are to look at when they ended their short tenure with Gasly, you would find a lot of similarities to Perez. For example, Gasly was 6th in the Drivers' Championship when this happened, and Perez is now in that position as well, very far away from the top of the grid. Therefore, with Racing Bull's shareholders openly admitting that they want the team to be what it's designed to be, which is one consisting of young drivers, Ricciardo could see himself being promoted to Red Bull as early as in the middle of 2024, and then prove that he has what it takes to help the team secure the championships in the Constructors category and seal his place from 2025 onwards. This is a massive change in the events, considering where everything stood a couple of weekends ago, and it also opens up the door for Liam Lawson, as the 22-year-old has openly threatened Red Bull that he would be forced to look for a seat elsewhere if they don't show enough interest in him. Needless to say, the interest would come from teams like Audi, Haas or Williams, and while these teams are not competitive, they're definitely perfect ground for Lawson to practice his talent and then be pushed into a competitive environment different from the one of Red Bull. Ricciardo himself opened up about talks that he would replace Perez, and as you would normally expect, the Aussie has kept things cool and quiet, adding, "I would never make any predictions in this sport. I feel like every year that this sport goes on, the more it gets. I know it kinda goes with the the trend of the sport getting bigger. It's becoming more Hollywood, so to speak, in terms of the profile the sport has, and also the narrative that runs with the sport now is certainly more Hollywood in terms of it. It's so unpredictable. So do I have any proof that I'll be anywhere else? I don't, and yeah, it's that crazy things happen, but I'm certainly not in a place to say that, or think that, or even predict it, so I try to keep doing my thing. Well, in Silverstone, it was Tsunoda who managed to score a point for Racing Bulls, but in the previous race in Austria, it was Ricciardo who snatched 2. The bad news for the team is that Haas is looking more and more competitive, and they might be in a fight for the P6 in the Constructors' Championship, which is why Ricciardo in Red Bull and a competitive young driver like Lawson in Racing Bulls might make a lot of sense for the Austrian team right now. It's safe to assume that Ricciardo's seat in his current team is all but secured right now, as a lot of high-profile people, including Helmut Marko as well as Peter Bayer, the CEO of the team, have hinted towards the lack of competitiveness and the wish of the shareholders to stick to their original plan, which is to make the team a young drivers-driven one. Helmut Marko has also addressed this situation, and when being pressured to give more answers as to who stands where in the current market of Red Bull's drivers, the veteran Austrian said that we will know a lot more during the summer holidays. It's not a secret that Red Bull might give Perez 2 more races before they make a decision that would influence his future, and it was already rumoured that before Silverstone, the Mexican driver has until Spa to prove that he can be the second man in Red Bull. If this is to be believed, then it's safe to assume that he botched the first chance he's been given. And to compare it to Max, who has also driven off in the same part of the track that Perez did on Saturday, the Dutchman's experience, which is way lower in years spent in the sport compared to the one of Perez, has been proven on the track. He managed to get off with only a damaged floor, but continued the session, which is the most important thing when you find yourself in a situation like that. Be that as it may, it's very unlikely that things could get worse for Red Bull from their position right now. And with Perez not helping in any way and being P6 in the Drivers' Championship, the Austrian team would find it harder to build strategies around Verstappen if they have 2 McLaren or Mercedes drivers around him now that he doesn't have the fastest car on the grid. Well, with all this in mind, do you think that Perez should be replaced by Ricciardo during the summer break? And if so, do you think that would help the team push towards greater results with the Aussie as the second driver in Red Bull? Let us know in the comments down below.